All right, so enough with the intros as far as like being a human being and talking to each other. Let's get into the topic. So we are here to
Yes.
talk about the Matt Walsh Daily Wire. I think it's fair to describe it as a conservative documentary, but a documentary entitled "What Is a Woman?" And it strikes at the core of issues that are related to trans people, trans rights, um, and also the um, advocacy on their behalf that the trans activist types are taking, that I think a lot of conservatives feel are putting some absurd demands on society, that we're being asked to do stranger and stranger things in order to accommodate a certain segment of the population who the contention is by the, from the point of view of those typically left of center and the trans activist types, that they're being discriminated against in some way or they're being marginalized in some way. And so requiring of people, and in some places in the world, in some places even in the United States, by law, to respect people's pronouns, to make all bathrooms gender neutral, to um, uh, and some people would argue radically change social expectations and conventions around what were traditionally women's only spaces, and allow people who otherwise would not be allowed into those spaces, despite the dangers that might entail, however rare those occurrences may be. I'm thinking about the Wee Spa incident not too long ago, etc. These are the kinds of things that people are complaining about. Some people even go so far as to say that there are members within maybe a minority people faction within the LGBTQ plus community, or people pretending to be a part of that community, who are involved in something that they call grooming. So it gets deep, and there's a lot to unpack here. But the documentary is concerned with defining what a woman is, which it seems simple, it seems innocuous, but it seems like, based on kind of what the nature of the interviews, it seems like there's something deeper going on below the surface. It's not just a matter of defining simple terms. There's something else going on. So that's kind of a rough summary of it. But I want to shoot it to you, Dre, and I would love to hear your summary of it as a whole, like I just did, but also hone in on a particular part that stood out to you that you want to talk about.
Well, I watched the documentary twice, and forgive me, audience, I'm fighting the cold, so if I grab up here, I'm grabbing the mic to mute myself. But I watched the documentary like back to back. I literally watched it, then started all the way over again and rewatched it, just so I could understand what I was listening to. And one thing that actually stood out to me is that nobody that Matt Walsh actually reached out to, they couldn't define it logically, which what is a woman? They couldn't define it logically. And me, the way that I operate in life, is an apple, is an orange, logically.
Mhm.
What are the layers with the autonomy of that? And does that make sense? So when I was watching the documentary, it surprised me how much of the people that's advocating for this could not answer the simple question. A lot of it was a lot of feelings and not a lot of logic. So that had me question certain things.
Mhm.
Um, I also saw on the flip side of that where people was more or less asking Mike Walsh the why, and which he answers his why because he cares about the truth. you know so in this now social climate where sexuality is free to express, that question is, why do we really care? So that was a question I was asking myself. Why would I care about this so much? Why would I want to care about what somebody wants to be called? If they want to be called, if they want to, if respectfully, if they say I am a woman, can you respect that? What is my response to that? So it had me question a lot of things,
Mhm.
as far as even my outlook on life and my logical mind going forward. So it was a lot to unpack, and I felt myself, you know, agreeing with a lot of what Matt Walsh was saying, because my family comes from this. My parents actually come from the South,
Mhm.
so a lot of people, especially blacks, they come from the South, especially during Reconstruction, a lot of them are conservative by nature.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we have conservative views. You go to church, conservative values.
Mm-hmm.
I also have, you know, grown up, and I have children that's growing up in a liberal type of mindset, a liberal freedom,
Mm-hmm.
where a lot of things are being challenged on the conservative side. So I understand a lot of the liberal views because I have teenagers who are now the part of that millennials who are saying, well, dad, this is the way it is now. Can you respect this? Can you look at it that way? So it's a duality that I looked at myself and trying to find a common understanding with the documentary.
Mm-hmm. So that's interesting. There's a lot to a lot of threads I can pull on. Let me hone in on one thing though. What as far as like, cause I know you summarized kind of your experience watching the documentary. Is there any part of the documentary as a whole specifically that you want to hone in on that just kind of sticks out, like lingering in your mind? Like, man, when that part happened, I was like, whatever. Like, is there a specific part that sticks out?
Well, when Matt went to the, I think it was, I can't think of the land in Africa, and he was talking to the ambassador and the chief, and you know that village, their view of the world, and said, "Nah, I don't want no part of that." That made now that stuck out to me more than anything, because if they think like that, who else thinks like that?
Mm-hmm.
And are we now trying to force our Western ways of thinking to other people? And is that another way of colonization? It just that stuck out to me more than anything, because a lot of people come to America with these whole big ideas and they see this and they're like, yo, I don't know if I want to be a part of that. And we have to, are we respecting their values and their side along with ours? You see what I mean? So that was a big thing for me.
I'm excited that you brought that up because that's actually, I've done this in two parts with another guest, and that's actually a part of the documentary we never talked about, and I've been kind of you know, eager to talk about it because I think that there's a lot to unpack there about kind of what Matt's intentions were for choosing that location to do the interview at, and
Yes.
what wider implications there may be.
Because I was curious why he chose that.
Yeah. And I don't know
Very
that I had the
curious.
answer, but I want to explore. So I believe in the documentary, in my notes here, Matt went to Nairobi.
Maybe I'm looking too close to home.
And
okay, Nairobi.
I believe he went to Nairobi, and the tribe of people was the Maasai tribe.
We came a long way to come and talk to you guys, thousands of miles from America. So thank you for inviting us into your tribe, first of all.
I can say it is my pleasure to meet you and feel most welcome. But you're here to learn with me. I'm here to learn with you too.
Great.
Yes,
and I think that was the labels that they gave in the documentary.
Yes.
Now it's an interesting question of how representative of the values of the Maasai tribe or of the culture of Nairobi generally this is. We have to be careful when it comes to documentaries to not assume that things are the way it's being shown in every sense, in every aspect. So there's a fair question there. I don't know enough about the culture of Nairobi or the Maasai tribe to be able to make that judgment, and that's probably, you know, an afternoon of research that I could do. So there's a question that I'll put a pin in, but if there's no funny business going on in terms of representing the kind of general views or disposition towards gender roles, gender norms in that culture, it kind of brings up some interesting questions about to what extent are the ideas that are germane to the kind of left leaning gender ideology, if I can put it that way, without being too loaded.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like like how widespread are these ideas really, and what does it say if a significant proportion of the African continent actually doesn't buy into those things, in terms of it interplaying or overlapping with the discourse on colonization?
Well,
um
because
but
my main thing was, out of all the African countries, which there's, I believe, it's 53 countries in Africa, he chose that one in that set of people because he could have went to Nigeria, he could have went to Ghana, or Cameroon. He could have went to anywhere, and I
Mhm.
was questioning. You know what I'm saying? I think, to me, the look of the people. You know what I mean? Because not all, and that's the thing that I was kind of questioning too. Because when I say the look of the people, those people are villagers. Villagers. They don't go to the big cities and different things like that. So you got a set of people with a set of principles that's constructed in their own set of community. It's not a population of people. It's not like South Africa, and it's not like Ethiopia. Places in Ethiopia and stuff like that. So there's a set of rules and standards that they have done within their tribe for many generations. Why set on that and not actually go to a city and try to answer that same question with the you know what I'm saying with the same type of vigor that he had? So that, I think, that was a question for me.
Mhm. Um, I have, yeah, I that everything you said resonates with me, and I had similar questions. I think for me, I really want, and again, this is probably going to require more research on my part when I have more time, but I really want to explore um the question of how foreign the kind of gender ideology that was kind of, in some sense, the subject matter and kind of the target of Matt Walsh's documentary. How foreign are those ideas to the various different cultures and regions and tribes of Africa?
What does a man do? What are his roles within the tribe?
At the role of a man, you need to work for your woman. Secondly, to have children. If you have children and you don't have something to feed them, you are not still a man.
And
Right.
and you can extend that to other parts of the world. My hypothesis would be that this is primarily a Western thing, and
Mm-hmm.
primarily a Eurocentric thing, insofar as
Well,
it's Western.
I was
And
about
that
to
has
say,
a
but
whole bunch of potentially devastating consequences for framing what Matt Walsh is doing is somehow white supremacist.
well,
If it
no,
happens to be the case, go ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
because the idea of transgender or transsexual was outside of even Western view, because you have places in Asia, that that's what they do. They call them lady boys or whatever in certain places. Bangkok is one of them. Places in Japan, places in China. So I don't
That's
think
true.
it's
I don't know that it's
yeah,
exclusive to the West, but
yeah,
I mean the ideology that is being promulgated, and that was kind of the target of Matt Walsh's documentary. I don't know how hard in the paint they go in the East, in places like Thailand,
right.
Bangkok,
In
and
time,
stuff like
yeah,
that, as far as requiring by law that people respect people's pronouns. I
true,
don't know that they
true.
do that in Bangkok or Thailand. And they call and actually it's actually not clear to me that the cultural norms around that are actually the same, in terms of making it a matter of human rights to
mm,
require that trans
oh,
women get to go to what were traditionally women's only spaces.
right,
I don't know enough about the cultural practices and norms in those places to comment substantively, to be
right,
fair. Now that's not an excuse. I think the burden would be on me to do the research, but there's still a fair question about to what extent they're even different between the East and the West. But definitely the idea of people who would otherwise be referred to as biologically male being in some sense socially accepted under the category of women or their what feminized proclivities being in some sense kind of accepted by the wider population. I think that there's some similarities there between the East and the West for sure.
Yes.
But yeah, so there's that question. But to go back to what the point I'm making and to try to accommodate what you said, because I think it's a valid point that you made. I'm actually curious how white or Eurocentric the particular idea that like in no uncertain terms, for real, people who would otherwise be considered biological males are women, just in case they feel they are or they experience gender dysphoria in a certain manner. That stance is actually pretty strong. That's definitely part of what conservatives generally and Matt Walsh in this documentary are pushing back against. And what I'm wondering is, to what extent is that actually a very foreign concept in the continent of Africa in general? My suspicion is that, broadly speaking, the majority of the cultures and countries there would not be very receptive to that idea. And if that's true, then I think it undermines a lot of the charges that a lot of people left of center have against Matt Walsh specifically, but also against the no good, evil, very bad Republican conservative types generally, that they're doing something like inherently white supremacist, or that the idea that some form of discrimination against trans people or trans ideology is inherently rooted in white supremacy, because like, if African culture doesn't like it either, and those cultural precepts predate the colonization of those places, then it's hard to blame it on the colonizer mindset.
What if a man decides that he wants to do the roles of a woman?
Kidogro orna yene hikunya lele aines ndogringen gro. In Maasai community, it will not exist at all.
Doesn't exist? What if a man decides that his gender identity is woman?
Kidogro orna yene le nega wanana ingro. A woman has its own duty, and a man has its own duty, and a lady cannot do the duty of a man, and a man cannot do a duty of a woman.
Can a man become a woman?
No.
No?
No.
What about a transgender? Transgender?
No.
No?
It will look like if you want to become a lady but you're a man, you have something wrong in your mind. Something wrong in your family, something wrong in you.
What about if someone was non-binary?
Come again?
Non-binary? Do you know, like someone is
you're not a woman, you're not a man.
Yeah, someone is neither. There's something else. Is that?
He's saying we have never seen things like those. For a man, he has a penis. For a woman, he has a vagina. So we know this is a lady, this is a man.
What if it's a woman with a penis?
Both.
Is that? People are laughing. Is that a dumb question?
They're just laughing because they have never heard something like that. This is their first time to hear.
Never heard it before.
A woman have a penis, and she is a woman.
In my country, I can't go a day without hearing it. We hear it every day. So in my country, sometimes you'll hear people say, a man will say that I'm a woman trapped in a man's body, and so they say that I have a woman trapped inside me.
They want to know a woman has the breast.
Breast. Yeah.
Secondly, she has a vagina.
Vagina.
And the question is, does this man deliver?
Does he deliver babies? No, not as far as I know.
The question is, let's say if you want to sleep a woman, definitely you'll do sex.
Sex with a woman. Yeah.
And you f the vagina, is it? But for the man, where do you f? He asked that question.
I don't know all the logistics of it. Based on what I'm saying, would you ever want to move to America?
They said no, never.
What is a woman, if you had to give it a definition?
She's saying a woman delivered, a man cannot.
So it sounds like you don't spend a lot of time thinking about gender. You just kind of live your lives. You don't think much about it.
He said no, because we believe that's a God plan.
God's plan.
He's saying that I'm shocked on what you are telling me.
He's shocked.
Yeah.
The Maasai people don't think much about gender, but they have a firm sense of their identity. It's clear that gender ideology is a uniquely Western phenomenon. So where did all this come from? Who came up with it? And why?
And I can't call it white supremacy for the simple fact is that the majority of the people that's in that community are white. So I don't want to call it white supremacy now if the left are using that, just like how they use the 1964 Civil Rights Bill to pass their own, laws and stuff like that. Then are you also using what a lot of people of color have just fighting just for civil rights to use to push your own agenda, which Matt Walsh could have highlighted in that video,